For today's lesson, we will be discussing about placing figures in coordinate geometry. So we can actually use the coordinate plane whenever we need to identify the coordinates of the vertices of a given figure. So here are some of the guidelines that we need to follow for placing figures on a coordinate plane. First is we have to use the origin as vertex or center. It will be beneficial if we will be using it as one of the vertex or the center of the given figure. Next is we have to keep at least one side of a polygon on an axis, because if not, the coordinates of the vertices would become much more complicated. Next, we have to keep the figure in the first quadrant if possible. So keeping the figure in the first quadrant will give us positive coordinates, so it's better if we will put them on the first quadrant. And lastly, use coordinates that will make computation as simple as possible. So it's better if we will just use single letters or terms and do not make much complicated coordinates so that it will be easy for us to identify the coordinates. Okay, so let's say we have this rectangle right here, which is placed in a coordinate plane. So we have triangle ABCD, wherein one of its vertices is the origin. As you can see, this point B. So it follows one of the guidelines. Another one is that it's on the first quadrant. So as you can see, this rectangle ABCD is on the first quadrant. And we also have here some of its sides, which is actually on the axis itself. So we have segment AB, which is on the y-axis, and we also have segment BC, which is on the x-axis. So this will help us in order to find the coordinates of the vertices. So we have here the given, which is point D, which is one of the vertex of the rectangle, and its coordinates are given, which is A and B. So A is X, of course, and Y is B. Now we will be using this information in order for us to identify the coordinates of the remaining vertices. So let's start with point C, or the vertex C. So we need to find the coordinates of this. Now we will be using the coordinates of point D, which will serve as our guide in finding the coordinates of point C. Now if you will notice, point C and point D, they are just collinear, or they are just on one line. So if the x-coordinate of D is A, that means the x-coordinate of C will also be A. Now, for the y-coordinate, since this point C is on the x-axis, and as what we know, if a point is on the x-axis, the value of y is equal to 0. So that means the y-coordinate of C will also be equal to 0. So the coordinates of point C is we have A, 0. Next is, let's have this point B. Point B is the origin. And as what we know, the coordinates of the origin is just 0, 0. So it's really helpful if we will use the origin as one of the vertex, because this will automatically give us the coordinates, which is 0, 0. And lastly, for point A, so let's use again the coordinates of point D. Now same with point C, point A is collinear with point D, and the segment created is horizontal. So that means whatever is the y-coordinate of point D, that will also be the y-coordinate of point A. So that means the y-coordinate of A is B. Now for the x-coordinate, since this point A is on the y-axis, therefore its x-coordinate will be 0. Okay, so now we have the coordinates of all the vertices. So next is we have this figure PARK, which is actually a rhombus. So we just have here point A and point R. So for point A, the coordinates are 0h, and for R, the coordinates are k0. So there are times that we have to consider the properties of the given figure so that we can find the coordinates of its vertices. So since this is a rhombus, that means its diagonals bisect each other. So we can say that AK and PR bisect each other. So each pair just have the same distance from the center. So if the distance of A from the center is h, that means the distance of K from the center will also be h. But since this is on the negative side of the y-axis, that means we will write here negative h. So they just have the same variable, but this one is in negative since this is on the negative side of the y-axis. And since this point K is on the y-axis, that means the x-coordinate will be equal to 0. So same case for point P. So if the distance of R from the center is K, that means the distance of P from the center will also be equal to K. But since this is on the negative side of the x-axis, then we will write negative K. So again, it's just the same with point R, but we will just add a negative sign since this is on the negative side of the x-axis. And since point P is on the x-axis, that means the y-coordinate will be equal to 0. So the coordinates of point P is negative k0, and for k, it's 0, negative h. So that's it for today. I hope you learned something about the placing of figures and the coordinate geometry, and see you next time.